Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Wednesday night, January the 5th. I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention, and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room is open. I just popped a link in there. And so what I want to continue talking about from Monday night, we left off on common traits of a dysfunctional family. It's a very interesting article. I find it very interesting because I grew up in a dysfunctional family, and we're still very much dysfunctional. And so I find this information very helpful for me. So I hope that, it will help somebody else out there too. So that's why I'm doing these shows. I'm not a counselor or therapist. I don't hold any certificates in those areas. Mainly just bringing out information that I find very helpful because I study continually, working on, I was actually working on a credit course at a university here in Calgary and had to stop going because I couldn't afford to go anymore, unfortunately. So, but I was studying international community development and human rights, child rights, and whatnot. And of course, I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dream Catchers for Abused Children, and we're always continually researching and looking for information that we find helpful. We think other people might find helpful. So I'm always researching, and I found this article, and I thought it was really interesting the way that she presented it. So that's what we're going to pick up, from Monday night. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And, you have to listen to your own discretion. I talk about everything to do with abuse, child abuse, mainly domestic violence and whatnot. The topics are sensitive to a lot of people. A lot of people may find the information very sensitive and may bother you, could trigger you if you're a survivor. So you have to listen at your own discretion to all my shows, right? I have a discretionary note at the very top of my show page, and it's for a reason. It's because I don't sugarcoat it. I just tell it like it is. And it's disturbing for a lot of people. I grew up with this. This is normal for me. It's really quite sad and sick and disgusting that it would be normal for somebody, but this is what I've lived my whole life with, and so I'm not uncomfortable talking about it. I was uncomfortable being abused, but I'm not all that uncomfortable talking about it. So, but some people are very, very sensitive, especially because if they may have, they may have not heard a whole lot about abuse, or maybe just didn't know a whole lot about it, or don't like hearing about it. So, if you feel the topic might bother you, please turn the show off. You have to listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I ask that you have permission to listen to all my shows. Any of my shows, because I'm covering a lot of adult material, even though really it ultimately is about stopping child abuse and really all human rights abuses. Age appropriateness is a serious thing, and young people have the right to protection. So I ask that you would have someone listen to the show with you. I know someone who's older, who's an adult, who can help you make that decision, whether it's your parents, a mom or dad, or somebody who you trust, who a caregiver, a guardian, somebody who is looking out for you to see if it's okay that you should be listening to this show, right? I appreciate that very much. Keep yourself safe, and you need to learn how to keep yourself safe online, right? And then just type into your browser, internet safety for children, online safety, things like this. We'll bring up websites with good information on there on how to keep yourself safe if you don't already know that, right? You have to keep yourself safe. Anytime there's a chat room present, you really should know how to keep yourself safe. So I have my good friend Gypsy Witch here from Australia. Hello, Gypsy Witch. Glad that you could be here. And it's daytime over there. It's nighttime over here. We're always on the opposite schedule, on the flip side of the whole thing. And I'm so glad that you could be here. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. And so we're gonna continue looking at common traits of a dysfunctional family. And this was by Celeste Stewart. She published this January 29, 2008. It doesn't matter. It's a few years old, but it makes no difference. The information is good. And this is from this website called lifescript.com. So www.lifescript.com/life/family/parenting. And then that's where you can find this link, Common Traits of a Dysfunctional Family. How to deal with a dysfunctional family. It's quite a few pages that she's written here, Celeste Stewart. Good stuff. I really like it, and that's why I'm bringing this out to talk about it, because I grew up in a huge, highly dysfunctional family, and it was normal for us. I mean, the dysfunction was normal. It was completely normally dysfunctional. And some people, lots of people probably could relate to that. It's just that our family was also abusive. So not only was there a lot of dysfunction, and it was just completely dysfunctional, it was also abusive, and that's the problem. Parents who can't cope, have no coping skills, don't work together as a team, as a unit. If there's a lot of domestic violence and violence within the home and abuse going on, you're going to have some serious dysfunction, right? So, I mean, we had some serious dysfunction going on. But I think it's very interesting to look at how a healthy family reacts to stress and, the difference between a healthy family and a dysfunctional family and how they react to stress and how they handle things. Because a healthy family works together to solve problems. They learn how to problem solve together. And they look for ways outside to get help sometimes. You know what I mean? They're not afraid to look outside of the family in order to get some help, right? They're not afraid to say, "Hey, we need some help with this. We can't just sit here and struggle. We're gonna have to get some help," right? And so they're not closed-minded. They're open to getting that help, and which really kind of helps to encourage the children to take that on in their own lives. You know what I mean? When they grow up. Right, just knowing that, hey, you can problem solve, you can work through things. Families really, if they pull together, can learn how to cope together. Really, it builds a stronger family, really, it should, because they learn, hey, we can get through anything. There isn't anything too tough. There isn't anything that's going to be going on that we can't get through. And, when you have a family that isn't pulling together and it's just everybody's just doing their own thing, there's no coping skills, the parents are not getting along, the parents are not treating their children right, the children aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, and anytime there's anything stressful going on, it can be a real problem for a family that's not coping and has no coping skills and won't look outside for any kind of help or assistance, right? It's a real problem, and it can lead to abuse, and that's why I'm talking about this, because, if the parents and the caregivers, the guardians are not getting help with the issues that are causing that stress and causing those issues in the family, there can be abuse, there can be neglect, because the parent will shut down or they'll become agitated and violent because they're just not able to cope, not able to handle things. They might become really unable to handle things at all and become depressed, and it can just lead to so many serious issues for children that are in the home, right? The parents, of course, it's their fault because they're not doing anything about it to get the children some help, and so the kids pay the price, right? That's the sad part. So she says here, I'm just going to read right from this page, and that's the link I popped in the chat room there. And she says, are you wondering if your family is dysfunctional, a dysfunctional family? Families today face a huge amount of stress, whether it's job-related stress or the arrival of a new baby. Stress takes its toll on everyone involved. Excessive, unrelenting stress puts a family at risk for trouble. How a family reacts to that stress is the difference between a healthy family and a dysfunctional family. So she went on to talk about healthy family traits, right? We went over this, and also dysfunctional family traits, right? So you can see the difference between how a healthy family would handle things, and then you can take a look at what a dysfunctional family how a dysfunctional family would handle it, and you can see there's a real difference. A dysfunctional family has other causes of stress that can cause all kinds of issues and come into play. Like she said here, parent-child role reversal becomes a major cause for stress. Other stressors can include irrational belief systems, unresolved losses, depression, fear of intimacy, fear of losing a loved one or caregiver, resentment, a lack of respect for other people's feelings or needs, right? And that's where people, the children in the home will suffer from that, right? Because everyone in the home would suffer under those circumstances, right? It's just unhealthy, right? So it's bad. She says, in addition, certain family dynamics and situations can lead to excess stress, such as when a member of the family has mental illness, drug or alcohol problems, fanatical religious beliefs, physical disabilities, emotional problems, or is abusive. And the presence of an aging parent, infant, toddler, teenager, or adult child living in the home can also be extremely stressful on any family. And that's what we were talking about Monday. That's the kind of family I grew up in. There was mental illness. The siblings were involved in mainly drug problems. My dad had fanatical religious beliefs because he's borderline schizophrenic. My mom, at the time, that's what he was diagnosed. I think he still is. My mom, of course, was manic depressive. They call that bipolar or something nowadays. But anyway, she was manic depressive, and physical disabilities, emotional problems. They both were abused as children. They had a lot of emotional problems. They were both abusive to each other in the marriage. It was absolutely horrible, a setup for a huge fall for everyone involved in that family. That's why I'm speaking out, because I want people to know that this stuff is so harsh on kids. And I want people to know that, if you're doing that to your children, you make sure that you get some help. And if somebody in the home is doing that to your children or to you, because you count too, get yourself some help. Do not allow this to destroy your family, right? Signs of a dysfunctional family. She says dysfunctional families lack many of the traits of healthy families. They're often closed when it comes to getting outside help and keep their problems to themselves. Firm limits between parent and child may not be present. Rules may be non-existent in a dysfunctional family or swing to the other extreme with rigid and flexible rules and mandatory compliance. We were talking about that on Monday night. Dysfunctional families don't cope with stress in a healthy manner. Alcohol is often a coping mechanism for stress. My parents were not drug addicts, but my siblings, some of them became drug addicts. Not all of them, but some of them did turn to drugs, and including myself. A member of a dysfunctional family may become depressed or feel overwhelmed at the scope of a particular problem, right? Blame is plentiful in a dysfunctional family, she says. Rather than dealing with the stress that is causing problems, dysfunctional families lash out at each other. So yeah, instead of coming together and trying to work to solve things, there's a whole lot of blame and a lot of anger and resentment because someone will be blaming somebody for something. Something's not going right, so either whether it's one of the parents blaming the other parent, or which was in my case, both my parents were always blaming each other for everything, including when they got busted for child abuse and they were brought up on charges. My mom was saying that it was all my dad. My dad was saying it was all my mom, and it was actually both of them, right? But, the kids knew, right? But the courts were like, well, okay, whatever, but you guys got to get help. You got to get counseling, right? Because you're both abusing these kids. Signs of a family at risk. This is something to take a look at. Healthy families can become dysfunctional families. As stress builds, the risk becomes greater. Factor in a new baby or an aging parent with dementia, and the entire family can go into a tailspin, she says. Your family may be at risk if you begin noticing some of the following signs. So she says here, she lists off a whole bunch of stuff here. A never-ending sense of urgency or a need to rush. Frustration for being behind or unable to get things done. Misunderstandings, harsh words, and feelings of tension. A need to get away. A longing for a simpler time. Regret that time is going too quickly, passing you by. Feelings of guilt. No time for intimacy. No time for yourself. So she just mentions a few things that, if you start to notice these signs, there could be some issues. Yeah, if all of a sudden, you just feel like, there's no time for just to relax. There's no time for intimacy. There's no time for even for yourself. And everything's just going too fast and everything's moving too quickly, and misunderstandings start happening, harsh words, because these things happen in families, right? And that's just kind of, we know this stuff's going to happen. It's how it's dealt with. And it doesn't have to be abusive. It doesn't have to become abusive if everybody has already had this solid foundation as a family that, the kids didn't have to worry because they knew the parents weren't going to hurt them. You know what I mean? They might be disciplined, but they're not going to be abused. So the kids, there wouldn't be that fear there. And the parents would trust that their kids, would listen to them and trust their children, right? And love their children and really care about them. And everybody, of course there's going to be problems. You can't get away from that stuff. Life is full of all kinds of problems. It's just how you handle it, how you deal with it. You know what I mean? And so families that don't come together and just blame and abuse each other, right? I mean, that's just one way to handle it. That's the way my parents chose to handle it. Very sad, but they learned that from their own parents. So that's the problem, just a cycle of abuse, right? How to deal with a dysfunctional family. It says if the signs suggest that your family may indeed be a dysfunctional family, it is important to understand that just as healthy families can become dysfunctional, a dysfunctional family can become healthy with help. So your situation may be temporary and resolve itself quickly, or you could be in for a long road of recovery. Each situation is different. For example, if you are dealing with alcohol or drug abuse problems, you will have numerous issues to deal with, including getting help for the addict, as well as healing the family members who are affected. The resentment and trust issues will also need to be dealt with. If you are dealing with a family member who holds irrational or fanatical religious beliefs, you won't be able to change him or her. However, you can change how you react to that person. That's just kind of what she mentions there. And I know all about this stuff growing up in a dysfunctional family. My family's still very much dysfunctional. And will it ever be healed? Probably not. There's only a few of us left. The rest are all passed on or killed or suicide and everything else. And, it's kind of like, how many of us are left? There's 2 siblings, including myself, three kids and a dad. That's it. Or would we ever be able to pull it together? Probably if we all went to counseling and really sat down and, did some family work as well as individual work. Probably could work through it. But my dad's 88, and he's psychologically ill, so he's mentally ill. So I don't know, would it ever be able to happen for my family? Probably not. But I'm working on it for myself, whether my family really cares to ever get involved in my healing journey really makes no difference to me, because what counts to me is that I'm doing it, and that I'm the one who's choosing to finally get some help with this stuff. You know what I mean? And a lot of mine is self-help, but I do talk to other people who are very helpful, and working on stuff, and whether I choose to go get some type of professional counseling, that I may do that down the road. But the whole issue is that so many times families just think, well, there's nothing wrong with the way we're behaving, you know what I mean, even though they know there is. It's just that they don't want to change. You have to want to change. Every member of the family would have to want to make it a better situation, you know what I mean, in order for the family to really heal and move on and move forward. Because in order to grow, you have to have all the members who are there and available agreeing that they would work through this stuff. And can you do it? It's incredibly hard when people don't think there's anything wrong with the way they behave, right? So when people are abusive, like my parents, they were brought up on charges. Did they change their ways after they were told that they had to stop abusing their children? No, the abuse just continued on because they did not want to change to the way that they were used to living. They would batter each other as well as the children, and both of them were both guilty of that. Did they want to change? No. And at the end of the road, my mom was a miserable old woman who died on her deathbed, a miserable old woman, and she was just miserable her whole entire life. She had moments of happiness. You know what I mean? Certain things, certain people could bring a smile to her face, but was she truly happy? No. At the end of the road, she was a miserable woman who hated her life and couldn't believe how horribly messed up it really was her whole life, because she was abused as a child by my grandmother, who was a horrific woman. And I talk a lot about her on my morning shows if you want to catch those, one child abuse survivor to another. My mother grew up under some serious abusive situations. You know what I mean? My dad was abused as well, and we're not quite exactly sure what all was involved, but we know there was some really bizarre stuff going on because no one's talking, and there were some stories going around. Will we ever get to the truth? Probably not. You know what I mean? But not on my dad's side, right? But on my mom's side, we know what happened, and my grandmother, she was a horrible woman. But like at the end of the road, that resentment was still there. My mom was still resenting the fact that she was never treated right by her mother, or in this marriage with this husband of hers who she never left and really should have and could have gotten away from him. But her life was just, that's the way it was. She kept saying, "Oh, that's just my life. That's our life. This is our life. This is the way we live it. It's always going to be hell. It's always going to be miserable." And so she didn't want to change. My dad didn't want to change. They didn't. I don't think they really knew how to do it. I don't think they even had a clue that it could be done. And even my dad today is still very abusive. Nothing's changed. He's just 88 years old and had a stroke. But I mean, other than that, he's still the same person he was when he was in his 40s and when he was abusing me. So, he just can't physically beat me up anymore because he's 88 years old, you know what I mean? But if he could, I'm sure that he would, because he still threatens to, right? The man is sick, and, would he ever change his ways? Probably not. And even with, medication, proper medication, if that's what he needed, or a psychiatrist or whatever, whoever would be able to come and actually help him out, would he ever be able to change? I doubt it. He's 88 years old. So sometimes this stuff just can't be resolved, but it can be with the members who are willing to do it. And so, I was kind of hoping that my siblings would be in on wanting to get help for our dysfunctionalness. You know what I mean? We're so used to being dysfunctional together that it's kind of like they figure, well, why not just continue on in the dysfunction? Why change it? You know what I mean? And for me, it's kind of like, well, in order for me to live and to actually want to stay alive on this planet, I had to make a decision, and that was to be good to myself and to heal from the abuse that I suffered as a child. So I'm allowing myself to work through this stuff, whereas they are not. They're in denial, and they, even though they'll admit the abuse and stuff, they're in denial about the fact that they have problems. Oh no, everything's fine with them. They're great, right? It's just everybody else who's messed up, right? So it's kind of like, well, okay, if they feel that way, that's fine. I don't really judge them for that. But I myself have to do what I have to do in order for myself to heal and to be able to feel good about myself because of the abuse that I suffered as a child, right? So that's the whole issue. Do they appreciate it or even acknowledge it or even have a kind word to say about it to me? Absolutely not. Because they're mad because I went public with the story, right? And they just think that's ridiculous and I never should have done it. But, I had to for my own peace of mind. And also for my brothers, my two brothers that went to their grave, like one of my brothers killed himself at the age of 33, and then another brother of mine died of a drug overdose in a shelter here in Calgary. He was homeless, and he was always overdosing, and he was always, it's not that he was trying to kill himself, he was just taking so many pills all the time that at any time he could have just died, right? Because he was always overdosing on pills, right? Pill popper. So absolutely horrible, and I went public with my story because of them. Because everybody used to say, "Oh, your brothers were such losers." Even family members, my own siblings would say, "Oh, they were just losers. They were just drug addicts. They were, they were just jerks, right? They just were worth nothing, right?" And I would sit there and go, and we all grew up in the same home, and how they were treated, how they were abused, and the situation behind that and why they did what they did, and you would sit there and call them losers and blame them. Hey, they did make their own choices. They chose to take themselves out. But the whole issue is that I know how they were treated. I know that they didn't have the ability to, people could say, well, look at you. You're fighting to stay alive. Why couldn't they? Well, because the abuse went on a lot longer, really, between my dad and them, and also my mom as well. But my dad was really seriously abusive towards them, and I think it really psychologically damaged them. You know what I mean? Because my dad is schizophrenic, and he's really messed up in the head, right? And so, they couldn't cope. They couldn't figure it out. They could not figure out that life is worth living. And because my parents were suicidal, and they taught us, I talked about that this morning on my show if you want to go catch the archive. But anyway, my parents just taught us how to die and how to hate this life and how to hate ourselves and how to hate other people and how to hate them, right? They just taught us a bunch of horrible stuff that we never should have been subjected to, right? That's some serious dysfunction, you know what I mean? But my siblings would sit there and say, "Oh, no, we're fine. We're fine." Right? And I'm like, no, I know they're not fine. I grew up in the same home they did. You know what I mean? It's just the fact that they're just choosing to not look at it. They'd rather not. And hey, some people have to do what they have to do. All I know is, in order for me to stay alive, I had to face it. I was ready. I was always suicidal. Never attempted suicide. Planned my suicides. I was always planning my suicides, and I planned my suicides up until 4 years ago. So, would I have gone through with it? I hope not. You know what I mean? But I'm so glad to be here today, because for years and years I was just wishing that, that I wasn't here. And so I'm so incredibly glad to be on this side of this. So if you're listening to this and you're having these issues, you get some help. I don't care what kind of help it is. You make sure you stick around, right? Because I wish my brothers would have done that. I really do. It's unfortunate. And I was just very fortunate to be able to make a commitment to myself, because I'm really a stubborn person. So once I make a commitment, that's it. So I made a commitment to myself, and I said, no, I'm going to win this fight. I'm going to have a really good life, and it's going to be a slap in the face to my parents, because they could not kill me, right? And that's the sad part, right? They almost got me to kill myself. But thank God I clued in to what they were doing, right? They were psychologically really trying to destroy the family at all times. So I clued in finally at the age of 41 and realized what they were doing, and that it was all on purpose, evil intent in their hearts to try to destroy their family and try to get us to want to destroy ourselves, because they were always talking about suicide, and suicide was an option, and also telling us that they would kill us too, because our lives were being threatened on a regular basis, right, physically and in every other way. So, you grow up like that, it's an option. So basically they were, I would have just been doing the job for them had I took my life, right? Which my brothers did. They actually let my parents win that fight. So I said, wait a minute, I can see what's going on here now. You know what I mean? If I do that, that allows my abusers to win, and I am not doing that. I'm going to have a good life, and I'm going to walk free from this. I mean, wow, what a feeling. And I hope every single person who's listening to this that's been abused and is having a hard time will hold on and do whatever you have to do, whether it's call a crisis line, call a friend, do something, but make sure you stick it out and you stay here and you allow yourself to have a good life. Give yourself permission to go ahead and have a good life, right? I mean, my God, that's what I had to do. So then she says, because stress is at the heart of most dysfunctional family problems, learning to handle stress and teaching the rest of your family how to do so is an important step. By stopping the blame and focusing on solutions, you can empower your dysfunctional family to heal. So in addition to, and I think, also, with that, even though, I understand what she's saying, sometimes people have to accept responsibility. I believe that in every case, really, not just sometimes, but really all times. And I think if parents would take the responsibility that they need to take, which is the responsibility of their parenting, and the children should take their responsibility too and say, okay, and come clean with what they've done. And you know what I mean? And say, okay, this is what I did. It was incredibly wrong. How are we going to fix this? How are we going to move forward with this? And the parents should do the same. You know what I mean? And especially if it's abusive, and if everybody would take responsibility for their actions, and then at that point, once everybody came clean with everything, right, and admitted to what they were doing, and said, okay, how do we change this? Then you could stop the blaming. You know what I mean? But you have to put the blame where the blame goes. You know what I mean? So for me to just ignore the fact that my parents abused us horrifically, and especially myself, because I personally know what they did to me. You know what I mean? I mean, some of my siblings, I watched my siblings being beaten on by both of my parents, but I know what my parents did to me because I physically was involved, and I know how much it hurt. And I know the verbal abuse, the psychological abuse, the emotional abuse, right? That the blame has to go where it goes, right? So it's not like I sit there every day and just would if I happen to be in the same room with my dad that I'm going to be abusive to him. It's just the fact that the blame goes where it goes, and people need to be responsible for their behaviors. But once a family would actually come clean and say, look, okay, my behavior has been extremely bad. This is what I've been doing. This is horrible. How are we going to change this? How am I going to change this so that I don't hurt my family? And the children could say, hey, we need to be more respectful, and I know we haven't been the most respectful, and we could work this out. Everybody take personal responsibility for what they've been doing, right? And then sit down and say, okay, once they got that on the table, they could learn to grow together and not play the blame game. So I sort of see what she's saying there, right? But all I know is the blame for me, I know where to put the blame, and that was on my parents, right? And the blame should go, and the shame goes to the abuser, because the abusers have a choice. They don't have to abuse, and they don't have to hurt their children. They don't have to hurt their families, their loved ones, or whoever they're hurting. It's clearly a choice. Abuse is a choice. So, blame goes where it goes. Sorry about that, but that's the only thing I kind of disagree with in this article. But she says, in addition to dealing with existing stress, take active steps to eliminate it. If an overly hectic family schedule is causing problems, consider going back to basics. Just kind of cutting back on things that just aren't really necessary. You know what I mean? And maybe some of the rush stuff wouldn't be such an issue, right? Having time to sit and just relax, just have a family night, getting family back on track, she says. So this is especially important when abuse has occurred or when dealing with just difficult family members. She says a professional counselor can offer an objective point of view, right? So, she's talking about the family getting a professional counselor to work through some of this stuff, especially if there has been abuse, right? Even if some members of the family refuse to attend, counseling can be a lifesaver for the rest of the family. So that's where I was talking about earlier, is that, whether my siblings want to get involved in any kind of, family therapy or their own, that's their own deal, right? But they may never, right? But for me, in order for me to be well, I had to do that. You know what I mean? And did it put a wedge in between me and my dysfunctional family? Absolutely it did, because I'm no longer playing the game. I'm no longer playing that dysfunctional role, which they think I should be playing till the day I die, right? And I actually tore up that role, threw it away, wrote myself a new life script, right, which does not include abuse, right? So, they don't want to play with me anymore, because they're like, well, you're not playing right. You're not taking our garbage. You're not allowing us to insult you. You're not allowing us to hurt you, and you've always been allowing people to hurt you. You allowed mom and dad, look what they did to you. So we should be allowed to do that too. See, they want me to play that role, which I absolutely refuse to play anymore. I got to a certain age, and I said enough is enough, right? Put my foot down. But will everybody in the family get involved? Not always, and that's a fact. And it's unfortunate, because it'd be great to have a family be able to heal from this stuff, you know what I mean? I would love to see that with my own family, you know what I mean? That would have been the best, absolutely the best. But you can't make things happen, you know what I mean? If people aren't willing to do it, there's not much you can do. So then this article is really pretty interesting. She goes on to talk about what's your parenting style and all kinds of info here. It just keeps going on and on. She's written some good stuff here, and I hope you will check that out from www.lifescript.com. Have about a minute left. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. And, I'll be back on tomorrow morning, but I'm having to change my show time. So I will be on at 5:30 instead of 6 o'clock in the morning, so half an hour earlier than usual. And so that'll be my schedule from here on out pretty much. So I was actually able to do it a little bit later, but now I'm going to have to switch it. So I'll be on extremely early in the morning, so whether people can tune in live or not, that's totally cool. I appreciate everybody who's listening to the shows. I must have 20,000 shows listened to. I mean, that's amazing to me. I had no idea how many people would tune into my shows, and I really appreciate you all being part of my healing journey. I hope that it's helpful and that, you'll see that, you need to hang on, you need to hold on, get some help, reach out. We deserve to have a good life. We really do. And everyone does, right? We're not just special because of this sort of thing, being abused or whatever. We all deserve the same human rights, the same right to a good life, right? To be treated with dignity and respect, and make sure you get some help if you've been suffering in this, right? Don't suffer on your own. That's all. It's very sad and a lonely place to be. Take care of yourselves. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. I'll be on One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and then on Friday as well. So have a great night, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.